went to walk the Camino. And that first time through kind of knocked me sideways. I was immediately taken by the entire experience. And I'm a scientist by nature, an engineer by training. And so I'm going out there not necessarily for religious reasons, but it's hard to escape this spirituality. And the other thing that happens over there is you learn how to talk to people that are perfect strangers. You just sit down with them and you start talking. And you can do that at any of these gatherings as well. Typically in Galicia in the end of the Meseta, where you're in a mental place where your mind is attuned to things that are outside the rational world. This is a great way to get your feet wet and to understand what the daily routine is like and to start to get a feel for how it transforms you. Don't fret too much. One day, maybe two, you'll find yourself in the rhythm of the whole thing, and it's actually pretty easy. It's hard to get lost.
Hello, Pilgrims. Welcome back to the Way to Your Way podcast. Here is your host, Efrain Mendoza. And today we have another guest. He's Leonard Vance. He's a scientist. He's also aerospace engineer. He's a pilgrim as well. He walked the Camino. And he wrote a book too that he's going to be telling us about his book later. And so welcome, Leonard. How are you doing today?
Oh, very good. Thanks for having me on board.
Okay, no problem. So the first question that came to my mind, so you are a writer, and you have already wrote a book. Can you tell us first about yourself and then about your book?
Well, let's see. So making the story sort of short, I'm an engineer that worked for 33 years, and I graduated, or I retired a number of years back, and I went to walk the Camino. And that first time through kind of knocked me sideways. I was immediately taken by the entire experience, and almost from the first day, it drew me in. And so I've been back twice. I've been back one other time with my oldest child. We walked in 2019, Camino Frances from St. John. And then I decided to do a long walk by myself. And I went from Gibraltar north all the way up Via La Plata, and then Sanabres to Santiago, and then out to Musha. So that was about 1,300 kilometers.
Okay.
And that one was a lot tougher than the others. You go through Extremadura. It was hot. It was lonely. And there was a lot of places that I went that I just didn't expect and hadn't happened to me before. When I was done, I kind of figured, there is a story here. It needs to be told. If for no other reason than the other pilgrims that are in my group back here in Tucson were asking me to write. But when I was done, it's like, boy, I've got a story to tell. So the book came from that. And, not to spoil what is all in it, we'll talk about some pieces of it. But it was a journey of surprising self-discovery. I did not expect to go where I did.
Okay. What kind of thing did you discover during that Camino?
I never really thought too much about why I was walking before. And, I came out to that first Camino and I told folks, well, I'm walking to figure out what I'm going to do after I retire, because I had just retired. And so that was actually pretty easy. I went back to graduate school. I got a doctorate and I decided to work a little while as a scientist. And so I did that. And so in the second time through, I was mostly working and talking and getting to know my youngest child a lot better because I'd been on travel so much and all those years of working hard. And so I didn't really have any strong epiphanies. But that third time through, it was different.
Okay.
And so go ahead and ask that question again, because I was going someplace with that.
What would you say that it was different this time?
Oh, that's right. I thought I knew why I was walking. but I didn't. And this is so commonly true for all of us who are on the Camino. You think you've got your reasons for being out there, and then, kind of hit you up the side of the head at the end, and you're going, whoa, that was not what I expected. So that happened to me about halfway through on that last Camino. And suddenly I realized I was walking for a completely different reason than I thought I was.
Okay. And then, so what is the title of your book?
It is called An Atheist on Pilgrimage.
Okay.
And, I'm a scientist by nature, an engineer by training. And so I'm going out there not necessarily for religious reasons.
Okay.
But it's hard to escape the spirituality. I mean, I think the right way to put this, after I've thought it for a while, is that spirituality, I think, is part of the human experience. It's there to some extent in almost all of us, maybe all of us, and it's what separates us from the animals to some extent. And it's there in me too. It just doesn't take the aspect of religion. And so when I'm out there and things happen to me that don't really fit within my expectation of a rational world, I discovered that I really liked it. It drew me in. And to tell you the truth, I think that may be what drew me in the very first time I was on the Camino and kept me coming back. It's a remarkable experience. And I think most people who walk, especially those longer distances, are going to get to that place. And that's a lot of what brings us back.
Yes. So there is, like you are saying, there's a lot that you are there when you're walking the Camino. There is too many things that came to your mind that maybe you feel, or anybody else feel, that what they are doing is something that, to describe it, you have to live it. I would say it that way.
It's really hard to come home and try and explain that to people. I don't know if you've had that experience, but I certainly did. I came back and I said, okay, I'm changed. I don't understand how, but I am different. And then you try and explain that to everybody around you, and you can't. And they sort of look at you with this quizzical look and say, what happened to that guy out there?
Yeah. That's correct. And that's why more nowadays, more and more people, and especially in the US, now has a very large population that are going to the Camino, comparing with 10 years ago, that it was not that many. And Leonard and I recently met at a gathering that was held in Canada between the American Pilgrims on the Camino and the Canadian Company of Pilgrims, where we were about 400 people there, talking. Most of the ones that were there were a visitor or walk the Camino somehow, and other ones have not yet, but they are about to walk the Camino in the near future. And the spirit that was there, people, the excitement, you know that because you were there. How you can describe that? That's part of the question.
Yeah, you can. And yeah, the great part about that gathering, or any group of pilgrims, you can sit down with them and tell them these stories, and they understand. Whereas I came home to my friends and the family, and they just sort of looked at me with these vacant, these wide eyes, going, "Yeah, okay, I hear you, but it doesn't really make sense." So that's the comforting part of that. And I didn't expect to have so much trouble reintegrating into the world after I came back. And thank goodness I found the American Pilgrims on the Camino, that local Tucson group, and it was a place that I can sit down and decompress that I couldn't do anyplace else.
Yeah, because everybody that you talk to, they are familiar with it, so they are open to listen.
Yeah, we've all got, all of these stories. And so, and the other thing that happens on the Camino is you learn how to talk to people that are perfect strangers. You just sit down with them and you start talking. And you can do that at any of these gatherings as well. So just imagine, all of these stories, 400 people, and they sit down, and it's just it's cacophony. It's just an enormous amount of volume of people talking. It's like everybody else around is looking. There were kids at the university there, and they were looking at us like, "Who are these people?"
Yeah, yeah. They were amazed. Well, all those people, where they came from, what they are doing, that they are so excited. Yeah.
Yeah, it was a good gathering.
I see that on your hoodie, you have there the cathedral from Santiago, and also you have people walking a crosswalk.
Oh, yes.
Where do you get that one?
Oh, well, this one, as near as I can tell, it's only sold in Galicia. I've only seen it twice, but I picked this up in Santiago. So, those of you who are, men of a certain age will recognize the Beatles walking across Abbey Road, right? And so It's been adapted to the Camino de Santiago. So I didn't want to, it showed up in Albuquerque like 100 kilometers before Santiago. I said, I'm not putting that sweatshirt in my backpack. But then I found it in Santiago. So I said, okay, it's got to come home with me.
Yeah. And to make the contest a little bit, probably you didn't buy it at the time because you don't wanted to keep that weight on you until you arrive.
Absolutely. Yeah, one becomes obsessive about weight in the backpack. I did silly things like cut my toothbrush in half and stuff like that. But I was glad I did because I'm not an athlete. And so it's hard for me to walk those large distances. I don't do it easily. And so it was wise of me to be as spare as possible.
Okay. And how would you relate your lifetime or your career and with all the experience that you had, and then as a scientist as well, with like the experience that someone live on while walking the Camino?
It's a funny thing, but there's a weird connection. As a scientist, going back to grad school, I took a bunch of planetary science classes, and I'd already walked the Camino twice. So what I was left with, well, let me tell you a short story.
Okay.
University of Arizona, which is where I work, ran the OSIRIS-REx program. And OSIRIS-REx went out and it landed on an asteroid. If you call landing a thing on something that has 1/100,000th of the gravity of gravity at the surface, they touched down and they collected a sample and they came home and they brought it back. So when you look at this asteroid, it's about 200 meters across, and it's a pile of rocks. And so they've got this basket that they push down onto the surface, and they collect some rocks, and they bring them home. Well, when they touched down on the surface, they didn't stop. The rocks just crumbled beneath them as if they weren't even there. They couldn't even sense any deceleration when they touched the surface. It just kept going. And so what we suddenly realized, or what they suddenly realized, is that this, it's a pile of rocks, but they're held together by the same electrostatic forces that hold dust particles together. And they barely are held together at all. And so it was like touching nothing. And so there was a sense of wonder that I got when I heard that story for the first time, which I realized was similar to some of the experiences that I had out there, typically in Galicia and the end of the Meseta, where you're in a mental place where your mind is attuned to things that are outside the rational world. It's kind of the same sense of wonder in a way. And I realized that there is a connection. So yeah, I think that's part of what keeps me coming back, is that I like that. It draws me in.
Yeah. So have you listened into that I have heard, I don't know if it's correct or no, but I have heard that there is like in some part of the earth, there are some electromagnetic fields, and in the Camino area, maybe somehow that electromagnetic field over there. Have you heard about that?
Oh, I had, but it sounds like the kind of thing that people would use to explain kind of the unusual mental processes that go on. But I suspect, I'm a scientist, so you look for things that you can measure, but out there's really nothing you can measure. You just sort of feel stuff. And I think that after walking 20 or 30 days, in my case at least, your mind becomes more receptive to things that might be outside the world of scientific measurement. I mean, that sounds awful. I want to say something better. You get to these thin places in the world where there's kind of a connection or more of a connection with your spirituality. And it kind of draws you in and gives you a little window at times. And it's really an incredibly powerful experience when you feel it. And I know, at least as a scientist, that this is all kind of inside my brain. And it's because of all the stress and the emotion and the pain that has gone on for 20 days that makes you more receptive to this kind of thought. But it doesn't make it any less powerful for that. It is, in the end, it's what keeps drawing me back, and I think I have to go back again.
Yeah, and for the audience, I know that pilgrims that have experienced this know about what we're talking about. But for those that have not walked that Camino, the Camino has been walked for 1,000 years. And the first pilgrim, no, it was the king of Asturias, Alfonso II, that he was the one that walked from Oviedo to Santiago, and that's what is known as the Camino Primitivo. So make a little context about history or what the legend knows, because that's what we know from the history. Nobody knows that's exactly what happened, but that's what is believed that happened.
Yeah, and there are so many legends and stories, and the mythology is so wonderfully rich. This is one of the, I mean, in some places, Roncesvalles, right? There's a story about Roland the Knight retreating back into France, and when you listen to the folks in Roncesvalles, which is just over the border from France, going into Spain, they say, "Oh yeah, the Basques they ambushed the baggage train, and there was a successful raid, and it kind of urged the French right back over the Pyrenees." And so when I tell this story back home, I get because my wife's a historian, and so there's other historians that I hang around, and they look at me like, "Oh, well, the story that is commonly told is that was a fight between Islam and Christianity."
Yeah.
And I'm going, "Oh, that's not what the locals say." And the historians go, "Yeah, that's right. The locals are right." And so some places, this mythology is a lot more real than the legend that has grown up in other parts of the world. It was an interesting conversation that particular evening.
Yeah, there is also, as I say, that the Compostela is because this is going from France to Santiago. Is the Camino is going through the Milky Way. Have you heard about that?
The legends that have made it to me are, oh gosh, it was the sarcophagus coming through the Straits of Gibraltar up north to Galicia, and then they put the coffin on the back of a mule, and the mule wandered around in Galicia and eventually collapsed, and then a beam of light came down from above. And the people that were with the mule said, "Okay, this is the place where we build the cathedral, because this is where God has shown us the spot." And so, yeah, the lore is amazing. I mean, you just start talking about Santo Domingo de la Calzada, and the story with the chicken that comes to life, and all these incredibly wonderful stories, and they're different for everybody that you ask, right? So every time I go back, I get different versions of this, and it's fun.
Yeah, there are different versions, like you say. But what is a fact actually is that U.S. population like year after year more and more to go to one of the Caminos to experience something like that. And it's not just the U.S., it's in general about different countries. And right now, if the audience doesn't know, but the U.S. right now going to the Camino, getting Compostelas we're talking is on the second place for the last 3 years, and just separated by Spain. That, of course, because the Camino is in Spain.
Yes. And I know that it's gotten very popular over the last years. I mean, I walked first in 2017, 10 years after seeing The Way, which was what got me going to begin with. I mean, you see that movie and you say, okay, I need to go do that. And so, yeah, 2017, I think at the peak, there was still about 1/4 of the number of people that arrived Compostelas last year. So it has gotten more popular, but I still think it's a remarkably worthy experience. Just to go out there and to talk to all of these people that you don't know. I met more people in 40 days in my first Camino than I met in 30 years of working in my business. And it felt enormously, it felt wonderful. It's just like an experience like I'd never thought that I would ever experience like that. The Way doesn't even prepare you for that level of sociability. So it was and is remarkable. And it's a really good, and this is in the book. I mean, why did I write the book to begin with, right? In the end, there's a lot of books about the Camino, and they come out every year, and it transforms people's lives every year. But I figured that if I can reach out and get, even one person, even one, to go out there and walk and transform their life a little bit, become a little bit more understanding of what the rest of the world is like, then that will have made it worthwhile.
Yeah.
It really changes your mindset. It's hard to stay in these polarized conversations, especially here in the U.S., when you've got this experience of walking with people from all around the world. It allows you to see things from their standpoint. It really helps you to see the world in a broader sense.
Yeah, that's absolutely correct. And to experience all that, a few days, if you have 8 days, 9 days, depending on how many days you have as a vacation to go there. But when you are working and when you are on that corporate level, different positions, sometimes you get into your daily routine and you get stressed. So this is a good way to go out there for a few days, even if you can just go for a week, to experience something like we are sharing with you today here.
Yeah, it'll happen right away. The first thing that happens, of course, when you go out is you sit down with people you don't know and you just start conversations and you learn how to. I'm an engineer, so I don't know how to do that naturally. I think most of us don't, but I learned that skill. And even that is tremendously helpful. I mean, if you're out there for a little bit longer, then you get to know people well enough so that you can start to understand why they're walking. Sometimes even when they don't understand why they're walking. And so there's more experiences to gain, as you walk further. But there's a lot you can get. And, I think I would challenge people. If you go out and you do this for, 5 days, 8 days, and it grabs you, you're going to come back. And you may do something longer. You'll get the hang of it really quickly, and you'll say, okay. You'll come back and you'll walk those longer distances if it's right for you. But this is a great way to get your feet wet and to understand what the daily routine is like, and to start to get a feel for how it transforms you.
Yeah, that's correct. And then other thing that sometimes worry about people, that when you talk about the Camino, that they're not, but there's too many people going on because of this social media, all that. The office, the Pilgrim office, recently make a change to how to provide or give the Compostela. In the past, the condition was there was the last 100 kilometers that need to be walked from any of the official Caminos, plus 2 stands per day, plus that being walked by spiritual or religious reasons.
Mm-hmm.
And with that, they give you your Compostela on the office. But now, and that happened a few months ago, they make like a change to avoid that. They're trying to not be as congested as they were in the past, at least the last 100 kilometers. Because what they're doing now is that you still need the 100 kilometers, but those 100 kilometers can be made with, for example, let's start in Rosenvalles, and then you go 80 kilometers from there to the next point, and then somehow you can avoid all that from Sarria and all that, and just going to the last stage, that is, in this case, O Pedroso for the French Camino, and you do that last section. So those 80 kilometers that you walk at the beginning plus the 20 still are going to be able to make your Compostela.
Yeah, when I first read the change to those rules, I went through it a couple of times, and then I came to the understanding of exactly what you said. And what if you haven't walked the Camino? The old rules were that it had to be 100 kilometers, and you had to start 100 kilometers away and walk in. So everybody on the French way would start in Sarria. So you'd be walking, I'd be walking along, and suddenly there's 10 times as many pilgrims in that last 100 kilometers. And it was a little bit jarring. And so they've changed it now so that it kind of democratizes it, right? So you can start and walk those 100 kilometers in any segment that you want, as long as you finish in Santiago at the very end. And that, I think, that's a good idea. That allows you to experience a lot of other places that are, well, I think the areas that are out past Sarria are generally a lot more interesting than the ones that are inside that last 100 kilometers. So I think it's a good thing. It'll move people out. It'll spread them out a little bit. And maybe, you'll be able to come in from places like Orense, which is 110 kilometers out, and walk that. That's a very quiet route, and it's got Monastery de Oseira. We were talking about that. And so there's other routes that come in as well. So I think it's a good thing.
Yeah.
I believe that it will be healthy for the entire community.
Yeah, and since you have been there in the Oseira Monastery, I'm going to ask this question because I recently did a podcast about that. There was an owner of a hotel that behind her, she has the Monastery of Oseira. And she was telling me that most of it, like you say, is the monastery only thing that are around there, plus a few other houses and a hotel. But she mentioned on that podcast that when people are walking through that area, they don't expect to find anything interesting, and suddenly it appeared that monastery, big monastery. Can you tell us your impression when you saw that?
I didn't know what to expect. I knew that I was going to Monastery de Oseira, but I didn't know what to expect. And so it's exactly what you said. You're walking through the wilderness, and that particular day, it's a pretty long walk. And the last half of it is pretty much all through the forest. And it's really quiet, I guess is the right way to put it. There's just nothing out there. It feels like the wilderness. And it was kind of odd. At about an hour before I got there, suddenly there's a wall beside the path. And I walked beside this wall for about 20 minutes, and it's about 15 feet tall. You can't see over it. You're going, what is on the other side of this? And then suddenly there's a gap where somebody has knocked it down. It was probably built some hundreds of years ago. And you look down over this valley of wild fields that are long since not tended. And in the middle of it is this towering monastery, these spires of Monastery de Oseira in the middle of nowhere by itself. I mean, there's no town around it. It's just the monastery out there in the middle of nowhere. And it's kind of like, what the heck is this doing here? But it has a long history. It's 500 years old. It was built as a place of refuge, and it was very successful for a number of centuries. It has fallen into ruin and been rebuilt several times. It was used as a prison during the revolution, during the Civil War era. The roofs had fallen down and been rebuilt. And right now it's kind of on the rebound. They've rebuilt it. in places. And, well, no, I think it's pretty much fully re-roofed now. But it's this enormous place, and it has, here's what this, 9 people live there. 9 Trappist monks with a vow of silence live in this place. And in complete solitude, pretty much complete solitude, and without talking to anybody, except for Vespers in the morning and the evening, right? And they gather together, and that's what they do. And so it's a remarkable place, and you get down inside of it, and it was originally plumbed with stone. So there is an entire dining hall full of the stone plumbing they pulled out, where they actually carved pipes out of stone and elbows and tees, and they put them all together somehow with pitch. I don't know what they used. And that's how they plumbed the thing originally, because that's all they had. They didn't have iron, anything else in the area. They just knew how to work stone. And the whole place is, it's kind of an oddity sitting out there in the middle. And it was really, it was really an eye opener, I suppose, out in the middle of nowhere. He's like, what is this place? But it's kind of magical after you walk around it for a while.
Yeah. Yeah. And for you, the audience that have not gone through the experience like this, beside that monastery, you have a lot of history around any of the Caminos. And remember that the Romans were prior Spaniards there in that area. So, because that belongs to the Roman Emporium at the time. So there is a lot of ruins from Rome as well.
Yeah, you get used to walking on Roman roads when you do Via de la Plata and Santa Brez. You tend to avoid them as best you can on Camino Frances because they'll turn your ankle if you look at them sideways. So you have to be careful. But you don't really have a choice on Camino Santa Brez and La Plata because those are the only real paths north. So, it goes back, 2,000 years in most cases.
Well, Leonard, this has been a really nice conversation. And what would be a last advice to those people that would like to walk the Camino but have not decided yet? What would you tell to them?
Well, I guess the primary thing I would say is that it's easy to get nervous about trying to be prepared for this experience. You probably, if you're interested in doing it, you'll watch movies, you'll read books, and then you'll talk to people who have already walked, and there'll be all of this advice. And you'll put yourself under a lot of pressure. At least a lot of people do that. And I would say, don't fret too much. When you're packing that pack, think in terms of the fact that you're going to have stores to buy stuff at if you need it. And it's much easier to do that than it is to, get rid of stuff once you're there and find out that, because your pack is too large. Don't fret too much. One day, maybe 2, you'll find yourself in the rhythm of the whole thing. And it's actually pretty easy. It's hard to get lost. There are places to stop on Camino Frances once every 4 or 5 kilometers. There's plenty of food. There's plenty of support infrastructure. Let your mind rest a little bit and go out and enjoy the experience. It's not something you have to stress about all that much, as it turns out.
Well, thank you very much for that advice. As a last question, if somebody wants to buy your book, where do they can get it? Right.
It's Amazon.com. And I think the story is mostly, there are great stories that you can tell from that book. And we really haven't touched on any of them here, but you would find out a lot about what happened and why I was actually walking. But in the meantime, there's remarkable stories all the way from the beginning to the end, because it's full of remarkable people. It's just what the nature of the experience. So thank you.
Okay, and if you remind again the name of the book, that way anybody wants to buy it.
Yeah, An Atheist on Pilgrimage. And people would look and say, okay, after reading that book, you're not really an atheist. And I'm going, well, yeah, that is sort of the point of the book.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and the Camino is for everyone. So if it's something that you would like to accomplish, that's something that I'm pretty sure you're going to be able to walk it at some point.
That's part of writing it, is to draw in that part of the audience as well, the secular folks.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you very much again, Leonard. And for you pilgrims, keep watching our episodes, and please include your comments on the comment sections of the videos, asking what other topics would you like to see in this channel, and that way we try to accommodate those future episodes. Thank you, pilgrims, and buen camino.
Thank you, everyone. Buen camino.